Today, we're going to compare a 67 Shelby GT350 and a 65 Sunbeam Tiger. So what do these cars have in common? Number one, they have essentially the same drivetrain. It's a small block Ford with a Ford top loader and a live axle. They are both considered Shelbys in the eyes of SAC, the Shelby American Automobile Club. The Tiger was designed by Carroll Shelby and his group, and obviously the 67 GT350 was the last of what's called the real Shelbys. This is the last car that was built by Shelby out in California. In '68, Ford took over and they were basically gussied up Mustangs built in the Detroit area. I'm a longtime Shelby fan. I grew up in a Ford dealership, so these cars to me are the ultimate cars in my collection. So to get a more unbiased comparison, I've asked J.G. Pasterjack, our production director, and David Wallens, our editorial director, to drive both of these cars on different kinds of roads and tell us what they think of these cars. I think it's going to be really interesting what the guys think. These cars are about the same money, they're both from the same time period, they both had the same drivetrain, but man, are they different.
You look at these two cars and you think, well, how can we compare a coupe and a roadster? And then you start to look at numbers in both and you realize, like, okay, they're not so different. It's the same architecture put together in a very different way.
You know, going in just on paper, the Tiger is going to be a little bit more high-strung and the Mustang is going to be a little bit more relaxed. And you know, the biggest difference, you got a roadster versus hardtop, which on a day like today, we're in Florida, it's a little warm out. That's a huge difference. I started out in the Tiger, and I liked it. It's very nervous. You can feel it. You can tell. Short wheelbase, big motor, not designed from the ground up to be what it is. It's forced to be a Cobra, which it's not. The Mustang with the big motor, it feels like that's what it's supposed to be. It's not trying to be something it's not. It is what it is, and it is. A powerful car, but it feels right. The wheelbase is right. It's somewhat comfortable to drive. Where the Tiger, on paper, you think it's what you want. Small car, big power. It's what we all want. The reality is, it's pretty nervous. Even just what we were doing today. You get in the Shelby Mustang, and it feels natural.
To get in that Mustang, it's a pretty modern feeling experience, considering the car is 53 years old now. The Tiger, on the other hand, is very much a throwback experience. That was probably closest to what I was expecting out of the day, was a car that was extremely raw, extremely sort of dated feeling, but in very fun, very engaging ways.
You know, like all of us, I grew up wanting a Cobra so badly. And the next thing to a Cobra was a Sunbeam Tiger. And of course that's what you want. Of course you want a Tiger, a Cobra, a Lotus Super 7. You want a little car that's got really big power. And then once you get a little older and get some experience and you've driven some of this stuff, boy, the Shelby Mustang just works. I mean, if I had to drive one of them home right now, I'd get in the Shelby, I'd drive it home, I'd be totally happy.
So I talked to Tim when we were out on the road about the motors. I remembered that both of them had kind of hot motors, the Mustang with the crate motor and the Tiger with kind of a built motor. And the impression that you get from inside the car is the Mustang is sort of a bigger motor, more lightly modified, and the Tiger is a kind of a smaller motor, more heavily modified. The Tiger, both of them have a ton of power. Tiger seems to make it a little bit higher up. Tiger feels like it has a much lighter flywheel. It just really wants to rev. Mustang feels like it has very long legs, like it just wants to kind of go forever. Both of them make for a really fun experience, but again, in very different ways, and in ways I wasn't really expecting. The Tiger has much more of a sense of urgency from the drivetrain, and the Tiger also puts down power surprisingly well, considering just how much flex you feel from the chassis. There's definitely a lot going on with the chassis, but you've got really good, nice, fine granular control over the power output in the Tiger.
The Shelby does feel like an old pair of jeans, even though I have very little time in that one. You get in it, everything makes sense, feels like an old Mustang. It's got the little Shelby bits, whatever. I love the quad headlights up front. I know everybody wants a 65 Shelby. The quad headlight cars to me were always the coolest. The color works. It feels like the Shelby, everything fits where it's supposed to. On the Sunbeam, it feels like it's all being crammed into a little bit too small of a box.
It's so hard to compare that car to anything, because that car is as close as you'll ever get to just sort of the platonic ideal of not just a muscle car, but of a performance car. The proportions are fantastic.
You don't have to explain what it is. If you have a Shelby, it says Shelby. You don't have to go through, oh, here's the whole story that this Sunbeam came to Shelby to make this car, and then the first question is, who's Sunbeam? They make a blender. No, there was a car company. So I never have to explain to people what a Porsche is or a BMW. Same thing, a Sunbeam, what's a Sunbeam?
It's beyond iconic. I mean, if you opened a dictionary probably and looked up muscle car, that could very well be the car in there. And if it is, like, you would instantly know what it is. When you describe the sort of essential pieces of sports cars to somebody, that's what you are describing. But on the other hand, if you said, I want you to build a car that don't have to ever worry about driving on the street, you just want to go fast and do insane stuff and have fun, that Tiger would be a fun place to start, man. It's doing all of these things that don't make sense, that sort of would not really be conducive to a good handling car, but because it's communicating how much of this stuff is going on, you can deal with it. You can literally feel the chassis moving around itself, and it sort of gives you a good sense of what's going on. With the short wheelbase, the thing just changes direction whenever it wants to. Like it really, I think I made the point, like, this car feels like it constantly wants to kill you, but out of love and respect and caring. Mustang, on the other hand, pretty nailed down for an older car. Steering's a little bit less direct. It's got the recirculating ball steering, a little bit less direct, a little more floaty in the front end. But the whole chassis kind of takes the set eventually. If I was going to an autocross, the Tiger is your car. If I was going to a track day, Mustang is your car.
Yeah, so both are really quick. Both are severely under-tired. They both have way more motor than tire, like any car of that era. Neither needs more motor, because you can snap the tires whenever you want. But once you are hooked up and you're moving, they both pull really nicely. You know, it's funny just watching people. We were in each other's cars. The Shelby got, I think, more thumbs up. JG can confirm. But people knew the Shelby was a Mustang and something special. The Tiger, until you wrap it, give it some gas, it's a little car. You know, it doesn't look like anything modern, but it was interesting. The Shelby got a lot of thumbs up. I don't think people know it's a Shelby. They think it's a Mustang, which you don't see a lot of these days.
There is something in that car, in just the shape and the presence of that car, that connects with people on a very emotional level. And even people that don't know much about cars see a Mustang and like, okay, that's a big deal. That car is something special. And yeah, it's hard to compare anything looks-wise to a Mustang, because that's a heck of a target. If you're just tossing me the keys to one of them, then it's an easy choice, and that's the Shelby, the Mustang. I mean, that car, it's beyond iconic.
If you said take one home, and I'm a convertible guy, I love convertibles, Shelby in a heartbeat. Sunbeam's cool. The Shelby is the total package, and it works. There's a reason why there's a ton of Mustang fans out there. Car works, you put big power in it, and I don't mean like crazy big block power, just give it enough power to snap the tires. It works, it looks right, the interior looks right. If I had to choose one, I'm Team Shelby.
I thought this was going to be an interesting comparison. I didn't know what the guys would think. I don't disagree with anything they said. I think you really need to think of these cars as a mass-produced car. The Mustang is a mass-produced car. They made millions of, not Shelbys, but the Mustang, the base Mustang. They made a lot of them. It was made by a big company. The Tiger is a different kind of a car. It is more of a bespoke, hand-built car, and it's not totally hand-built, but it certainly feels that way. It comes off that way. So you have to decide kind of, do you want a mass-produced car or a more bespoke car? The next thing is obviously it's roadster versus hardtop. If you want one, the other's not going to scratch the itch for you. But we got to get down to it. We can go back and forth. We can talk about this and that and bespoke and mass-produced. But Those guys both picked the Shelby, and I've been thinking this whole time, if I had to get rid of one of these cars, which would it be? Every time I get in either of these cars, I go, God, I love these cars for different reasons. But the difference for me would have to be the styling. And when I walk out in the garage, and I like the Tiger, I think it's cool looking, I think it's badass, but when I go out in the garage and see that Shelby, I just go, oh my God, that is pure sex, that is so cool. So I think, again, narrowly, we have to give the win to the Shelby Mustang. Hey, we're having a lot of fun with these comparisons. We've got more in store for you. If you want to check them out, go to classicmotorsports.com or go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to Classic Motorsports.
Support brands that support Classic Motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. Visit crcindustries.com to learn more.